Thank you for joining us again on another episode of the Commend Journey podcast, the podcast for industry professionals in the communication and security world. I am your host, Michael Diamond, and today I am here with a new guest for you to meet. And so in Commend Journey podcast fashion, I will let them introduce themselves. So tell me, who do I have on the line today?
Hey, Mike, how you doing? This is Frank Scala speaking with you today. So I can give you a little background on myself.
Mm-hmm.
I am basically a smart building consultant and security SME here at Arup. Arup is a global firm with over 18,000 plus consultants globally, and we consult in all forms of structures, whether it be structural technology. We're pretty much the go-to guides when it comes to how to build a building.
I've noticed that I did just a little bit of a brief look in, and you have some quite a few named buildings that most of our audience would know. The one of which I noticed was the Sydney Opera House.
Yes, we do. So the founder of the company's name is Ov Arup, or Sir Ov Arup, and the one project that he was actually became globally recognized for.
Mm-hmm.
And the neat thing with Arup was that they kind of revolutionized kind of how we work. Ov himself, he was a philosopher and an engineer, so he really took time and did a lot of critical thinking around processes of what are we doing, how we do things, how can we make things more effective.
Okay.
To a point, actually, that when you do work at Arup, we first refer to each other as Arupians.
That's neat. We sort of have that same internal thing here where I work at Commend, where we talk about a different language. Some of us talk about a different language that you speak internally, which is Commendian, sort of when it comes to projects and product numbers and getting people their projects to the finish line. The way we do things is a Commendian way. It's sort of the same play on words. Interesting.
Yeah, no doubt.
So today, the topic focus is going to be smart buildings, intelligent building design, that sort of area. And I think where I want to start off first is real broadly, because I'd like to make sure that even people who don't have a background, or maybe they're coming to this podcast thinking, okay, I want to learn something about intelligent building design or smart buildings as they are in the 21st century. What does Arup consider a smart building? How do you view it?
That is a very good question. And truthfully, there's a set concrete answer for it. Because a smart building can mean many things to many different people. So it's typically looked at on a case-by-case, project-by-project basis, where we would go ahead and sit down with the client. We would do some visioning and strategy with them within this process, a journey of what they have. Try to find out essentially what is important to them in terms of user experience, user journey, operational efficiencies, and sustainability.
Okay. So I guess where does if a business is looking to start sort of building their project at the ground up, what are say three key things that you're going to look at amongst the myriad of stuff that you're going to show them and try to educate them on? What are the three big pillars that they would have to start the project with?
Sure. So essentially what we would do is that would really start with the visioning and strategy. So we would sit down with all the key stakeholders on the project, right? And figure out essentially what different things in their day-to-day they find helpful and what things in their day-to-day basically kind of hinder them from being more productive or happy or productive in that sense. So typically when we do something like this, it typically falls into like the three pillars that you were mentioning, which would basically be user journey experience, sustainability, and operational efficiencies.
Interesting. So would you also sort of mirror that with a client that came to you and said, Frank, I've got a building, it's 150 years old, and I'm getting killed by local or state ordinances because the building is not up to what they consider is necessary for the current code requirements, or say something to that effect. Would you use the same process? Would you sit down with them and say, okay, what's the vision for the building? And then maybe instead of what do you dream that you'd want in here, you would look at a targeted situation and say, okay, the city or state, local government has said you have to do X. Here's how we solve for X.
Yeah. So essentially, in regards to that, we would generally go through the same process, but knowing that up front, then you know that one of the main pillars would obviously be sustainability. Because what you are forementioning is actually coming around the corner. There are a lot of net zero mandates going around, especially in major metropolitan areas, globally, not just within the U.S. itself, right? And as a result of that, there may be some things that we can leverage to make those buildings a little bit more sustainable and a little bit more intelligent.
Okay. So for the audience who may be coming to this for the first time, can you give me a short sort of bullet point as far as what net zero means to them?
Sure. So net zero is basically a term that my sustainability folks use to basically describe a building being carbon neutral. So the energy that the building is using, basically, in terms of fossil fuels and all those sorts of things, right, is basically put down to zero. So that being said, one of the biggest popular trends today for a building that you might see is something called electrification, right? So everything in the building is basically using electricity, very similar to like your EV car. And it's not relying on things like diesel fuel for backup generators or like other key components of the building that may require those type of fossil fuels. So the idea overall with net zero is to basically get rid of the fossil fuels.
Certainly. And so what are probably your most common fossil fuels that get removed from buildings?
The two big ones really would be gas and diesel would be the second one.
What challenges are represented when you try to remove something like gas?
It could be a lot of different things. I mean, ideally, the current systems that we have today that basically, if so you do have that old 150-year building and you do have gas, now obviously what you're looking at doing is really changing and doing a major overhaul to your mechanical, electrical, and plumbing infrastructure, right? In order to basically go ahead and use something like electrification. On your typical non-standard building, I would say gas for like heating and things like that is probably the most used fuel.
So if we then turn that page and look at something like diesel, are we looking at more like diesel generators when it comes to larger structures, or something else?
Typically, with something like that, you'd be looking more at something like solar panels or wind or some type of method of being able to harvesting energy from elsewhere, backing it up into batteries and having like an actual UPS.
So solar is an interesting part of this conversation, I assume, when it comes to getting buildings progressed into the proper way. I'm certain that over the years you've experienced some pushback on the effectiveness of solar. When they come to you concerns about solar, as far as how much it can generate, where it can be stored at, is that something that you've got pre-made solutions for already when you work with other manufacturers, or do you tend to work in sort of a holistic, unique approach with each customer?
Yes, it's a holistic, unique approach because each building has different needs. They have different needs specifically with energy and what those loads may be. So we have to identify that, capture it in order to be able to come up with different manufacturers and their solutions that may work for them.
Okay.
So it's very much unique and tailored for each project.
So I wonder if you would, for the audience here, walk us through the sort of the secondary steps after the vision meeting, after sort of the foundational purpose points are put together. You get a schedule from the customer that says this is about when we want the project to launch, and here are all of the factors that you'll be involved in. What do you do past that point when it comes to project management or dealing with I don't know, something like the COVID shipping delays or all the stuff that came about a couple of years ago when uh, we'll just say that companies were needed to be very agile to meet their customers' needs.
Right. So typically, what we try to do is make sure that um, we stay a little bit ahead of things in terms of specifications, with kind of knowing maybe what supply chain might be doing. But it's something usually that most designers or engineering firms typically don't focus on. That's more of a construction management or contracting type of role, because they are doing the ultimate like end implementation of the design
Mm-hmm.
and the and kind of following what needs to be done. I'd say prior to that, though, with the vision, the other thing that we do is that when we find out what those needs are, right, we will equate different technologies that may be beneficial to them. And then we'll go through like a process of saying, yeah, we want this, maybe that one, definitely not this, that kind of thing. So, for example, if someone was like into user experience, right? Then their focus there might be having different applications like a tenant engagement application or some type of way to have seamless visitor management with parking, possibly even simplifying conference rooms, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
in order to basically enhance that like end user experience.
Nice. We also enjoy enhancing an end user experience. It's sort of something that we do at Commend. But I wonder if you could talk, maybe with the names scrubbed off of it, or a recent project that you've brought to completion, and so this problem that was presented to you, and then the way that it got solved.
So I did have one project which actually ended up being a case study. This is a little more security centric. So
Sure.
this was back, I want to say in 2017, where I had a particular client that wanted to have a manless building, right? So there wasn't going to be no reception, nothing like that. They had elevated destination dispatch. They wanted basically the tenants of the building to be able to manage their own visitors. And on top of that, they wanted everything to be touchless. So we came up with a touchless solution for them using a variety of products. I made sure that all the various integrations that needed to happen were there. It all resided on a converged network. And the method that we use on this building was actually something that became a really hot topic during COVID, if you recall, having everything be touchless.
Mm-hmm.
We actually came up with a process basically to have credentialing and being able to go through from the front door to the turnstile. Turnstile tells you where to go. Automatically, you go into your elevator, and it automatically takes you up to your floor without a push of a button.
Well, fantastic. It's one of the most interesting points about building automation for me is not necessarily where we are; it's where it will eventually go, and that intelligent design, and how you can take a 200 plus year old building and be able to work a retrofit into it where it can accept the technology and the people that are moving through it in the the 2020s, right? It's definitely interesting to see that those projects are continuing to going on. And so I would then ask off of that question, that sort of idea is, what are you seeing emerging now in technology? What pieces are you beginning to see come out that maybe you've been waiting for a couple of years in these new projects?
The real big one now that's really starting to pop up more and more is occupancy and occupancy sensors, being able to provide real time occupancy loads of where people are, right? And being able to basically leverage that information
Mm-hmm.
to basically optimize how people are using their spaces, as well as potentially how much energy is being used within that space. I would say that's one of them. I'd say another one would be tenant engagement. Is another pretty big one. I think it's starting to come up more and more these days. So essentially, what that is that say you're at 21st Street Tower, right?
Mm-hmm.
21st Street Tower would actually have their own app for the tenants to use, which would basically provide them any kind of credentialing they need to get in and out of the building, parking. They could use that same app to get their car valeted, pulled up, to basically order services like dry cleaning, things like that. Know various restaurants in the area where they can go shop. A whole really like neat variety of things, so that people feel that it's not just a building, but it's a community that they're a part of, right? And
Sure.
that it's a living, breathing thing along with almost everyone else.
Yeah, I think that's a really unique way to put it, right? So you're creating these silos, these different environments. It's almost as if when a project is completed, that the end user has something that's completely unique to themselves. And I think that's fascinating, a fascinating way to present a solution to a customer. It's a wonderful way to show them that not everything is just something they're going to buy at a box store or cookie cutter from one builder to another, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing. A lot of the stuff with smart building today, it's very, very customized to the user because each user has their own separate method of operations, right? Which would then in turn give you a separate outcome to those sets of operations, as well as different technologies that they may use and in their day to day to achieve those operations, right? So that's why when it comes down to a smart building, things are very, very unique, and there's not that one silver bullet to say, a smart building's this, you know. Now, I will talk about this as well, though. There are organizations out there, such as Wide Score, and they have a certification called Smart Score, and that certification basically helps landlords tell tenants how smart their building is, right? So it's very similar to like a LEED, if you've ever heard of
Hmm.
LEED, where it goes from like a certified to platinum level, and there's certain criteria that you need to hit in order to get to each level. Something like that, I think, is in the future is also going to be much more prominent.
So let's talk about that then. So things in the future that are going to be much more prominent. I tend to ask guests of the show when they sit down and look at the future of their portion of the industry.
Yeah.
What is something in the next 5 years they see their end users, the people who work with them, being able to get into their hands?
The idea of touchless and seamless is going to become more and more prominent, right? In terms of technology, whatever that is. So, idea there would be like instead of having maybe even mobile credential at this point or
Hmm.
card, right? It might be now like facial authentication, right? Or it could be something like Bluetooth beaconing, right? As a self identifier, as you move around a space, right? To gain access to the space. Or, or things like cloud based services like visitor management, becoming more and more seamless, where once you enroll somebody in there, and it does say like a third party like background check on the individual and that gets cleared, that automatically then, right, will send the various credentialing information, say,
Hmm.
to a person. And then what they may do at that point is they may be able to use their phone, right, to take a selfie of themselves, of their face, in order to roll into that, say, facial authentication and move about the building that way. As well as we really haven't touched on this very much yet because I really think it is still in its infancy, but AI and robots and kind of the role they're going to play, things like virtual reception at a front desk,
Sure.
those kind of things. I do feel as though eventually those type of more like mundane processes will be replaced by AI.
Yeah, that's something obviously Commend right now is rolling out to a lot of its customers. A lot of people are coming to us about Ivy and the solution, parking solutions, and other sort of intelligent assistant, voice assistants that we have. So we're seeing that in our space too, and I think it goes without saying that it's going to be something that's going to continue to project itself out over the market in different iterations. Right? It is a long time coming, and it's a long ways when you think about something like Siri or talking to Google Voice 5 or so years ago. The game is quickly changing. and it's going to be something that potentially could deliver a lot of value for customers. I guess as a sort of a wrap up question, Frank, what I want to know is if you're out there in the market looking for uh, sort of that smart building upgrade, give me 3 questions you would ask any manufacturer you're working with.
So if I was going to go ahead and look for a particular technology to use, if the first big one obviously is going to be if they have an open API. I'll ask them questions about their research and development to see how invested they are in R&D. Because obviously some companies are more invested in that than others. And then the other thing too is I would try to get an idea of basically product maturity and see where it was currently deployed. But not only that, but see who they already have integrations with and what those integrations are.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. If any of our listeners want to get in touch with you directly, how do they do that?
Shoot me an email at frank.scala@arup.com, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, fantastic. I appreciate you coming on the show today, Frank. And for our listeners who are interested in all sorts of extras about smart buildings, we hope you have found this informative. So thanks and have a great day.
You too. Thank you.